Okay, are you ready for this? We're going deep on spyware today. It's Pegasus Spyware. That's right, like the mythical horse, except a lot creepier. We've got two sources for this deep dive. One from Dark Reading, that's a cybersecurity site. And the other one is from 9 to 5 Mac, which I'm sure you know, it's the Apple blog. But the fact that both of them are talking about this, you know that it's a big deal. So we're going to be talking about government surveillance, journalists getting targeted, and even, wait for it, a way to scan your own phone for Pegasus for like $1 with an app. But before I get into all that, I want to bring in our expert to set the stage. What exactly is Pegasus spyware? I mean, why all the hype?
Pegasus is a type of spyware that's developed by this Israeli company, NSO Group,
Hmm.
and it's extremely sophisticated. It can give the attacker, essentially, full access to your phone.
Full access, that sounds intense, like right out of a movie.
Yeah, it's pretty scary stuff. What makes Pegasus so dangerous is that it can exploit vulnerabilities in operating systems. Even ones that haven't been discovered yet, these are called zero-day exploits. And they often use these zero-click attacks, which are even more kind of stealthy than they said.
Zero-click attacks. Okay, you're going to have to explain that. That sounds like something out of like a spy movie.
Well, imagine this. You get a text message, just a regular text message, you don't have to click it, and boom, your phone is infected. That's it. That's all it takes.
So I could be getting spied on right now,
Yeah,
and I wouldn't have a clue.
that's the scary part. Pegasus can access everything. Your messages, emails, photos, location, even your passwords.
Oh, wow. So how common is this? I mean, are we talking like James Bond level targets, or should everyday people be worried about this?
Well, that's where some new research from a company called iVerify gets interesting. They scanned thousands of phones, and they found that the rate of infection is actually a lot higher than anybody thought. Like 2.5 out of every 1,000 devices they scanned were infected with Pegasus.
Wow. Okay, that's more than I would expected. So this isn't just for like, government officials and stuff.
No, it's much broader than that. And another thing that iVerify found is that some of these infections actually go all the way back to 2021.
So this is not a new thing.
Not at all, meaning that it's been under the radar for a lot longer than we thought. And it affects both iPhones and Androids, so nobody is really immune.
So much for Apple's, legendary security.
Right. It really shows you that no system is completely invulnerable.
Well, this is starting to feel like a digital pandemic or something,
Yeah.
But
Right.
if it's been around for that long, why are we just hearing about it now? I mean, did security experts completely miss this?
Well, part of it is that the way iVerify detects Pegasus is pretty innovative. Traditional security software, it often relies on kind of, looking for known threats, known signatures. But Pegasus is so sophisticated, it's always evolving, always changing, so those traditional methods often miss it.
So how does iVerify do it? What's their secret sauce?
They've developed a way to kind of analyze the behavior of your phone. They're not looking for the spyware itself, they're looking for the footprints, the signs that it leaves behind.
So they're like digital detectives, basically.
Exactly. They can spot those subtle anomalies that suggest something's not quite right.
That's really cool. So they're looking for like unusual activity, anything that seems out of place.
Yeah, exactly. Like if there's data leaving your phone that shouldn't be there, or if certain apps are acting strange.
So like they're catching the spy in the act by looking for the clues.
Precisely. And it seems to be working because they've already uncovered a bunch of new Pegasus infections that were missed by those traditional methods.
That's impressive, but it's also kind of scary. So who are these new targets? Is it the same old like journalists, activists, politicians?
Well, yes, those groups are definitely still being targeted. But what's concerning is that iVerify is finding that Pegasus is now being used against a much wider range of people.
You mean like regular people?
Yeah, we're talking about business leaders,
Yeah.
government employees, even just everyday folks.
So it's not just about espionage anymore. It feels like anyone could be a target.
That's right. And that's what makes this so unsettling.
Yeah.
Because it really raises those questions about, who's being watched and why.
Okay, I gotta ask, how does Pegasus even get onto your phone in the first place? You don't just like download it from the App Store, right?
Right. That's what's so sneaky about those zero-click attacks. The NSO Group, they're constantly looking for new vulnerabilities in phone software.
So it's like an arms race. They find a weakness, Apple or Google patches it, and then they gotta find a new one.
Exactly. It's a constant cat-and-mouse game. And they're willing to pay big bucks for these exploits, sometimes hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars.
Wow. So even if you're super careful about what you click on, you could still be vulnerable.
That's right. It's a real challenge.
So what can we do to protect ourselves? I mean, is there any hope?
There is. It's not a hopeless situation. And that $1 app I mentioned, that's where things start to get interesting.
Oh, yeah, the iVerify app. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, let's dive into that.
So this iVerify app sounds pretty promising. I mean, 9 to 5 Mac was saying you can scan your phone for Pegasus once a month for free. Is it really that simple?
Yeah, the app itself is really easy to use. And like we were talking about before, the technology is pretty cool. It's not looking for, specific spyware files. It's analyzing how your phone is behaving.
Oh, right, like a digital detective.
Exactly. So even if Pegasus is, constantly changing its code, iVerify can still spot those telltale signs that something's off.
So what kinds of things is it looking for?
Well, you see, when Pegasus is on your phone,
Yeah.
it needs to communicate back to its, controllers to send back the data it's stealing. And iVerify is really good at detecting those kind of sneaky signals, the ones that don't match up with your normal app usage.
Ugh. So it's like catching a spy, sending secret messages back to headquarters. And if the app does find something suspicious, what happens then?
Well, you can send the results to iVerify's team of experts. They'll analyze the data and let you know if they think your phone's actually been compromised.
Okay, that makes sense. So the free version lets you scan once a month, right?
That's right, which is a pretty good deal.
Yeah, it's like having a free security checkup for your phone. But I know you mentioned there's also a paid version.
Yeah, so for organizations that need kind of more serious protection, they have a subscription service that gives you, continuous monitoring, more advanced threat detection, that kind of thing.
So it's like having a 247 bodyguard for your phone, basically.
Exactly.
But is this app really effective? I mean, is it going to catch everything?
Well, it's important to remember that, no security solution is foolproof,
Yeah.
but it's definitely a valuable tool.
It's like having a good lock on your door. It doesn't guarantee that nobody's ever going to break in, but it definitely makes it harder. So what else can people do to stay safe?
Well, the most important thing is to keep your devices updated.
Oh, yeah, those software updates, the ones we all love to ignore.
Yeah, I know they can be annoying, but those updates often contain patches for, like, newly discovered vulnerabilities, so they're really important for keeping your phone secure.
Okay, no more hitting the remind me later button.
Right. And of course, just be smart about what you click on and what apps you download.
Common sense stuff, but it's easy to forget sometimes.
It is, especially when we're all so busy and distracted.
I have to admit, this whole conversation about Pegasus is making me a little paranoid.
I get it. It's definitely unsettling to know that this kind of technology exists, but the good news is that we're not powerless.
Yeah, we can take steps to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And we can also speak out against this kind of invasive surveillance.
Absolutely. The more people who are aware of the problem, the better.
This whole Pegasus situation really raises some big ethical questions, though, doesn't it? I mean, on the one hand, I understand that governments need tools to, fight crime and keep people safe. But on the other hand, this kind of technology could so easily be abused.
You're right. It's a really tricky issue. There are a lot of different perspectives on it. Some people argue that, spyware is a necessary evil, that it's essential for national security and preventing terrorism.
But what's to stop governments from using it to spy on their own citizens or to silence their critics?
That's the big concern. And it's why a lot of people believe that there needs to be much stricter regulation of spyware to ensure that it's only used in very specific circumstances with proper oversight.
That makes sense. What about the companies that are selling this spyware? Do they have any ethical responsibility here?
That's a tough question. Some people believe that companies like NSO Group are complicit in human rights abuses because their technology is being used to target journalists and activists.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that they're just innocent bystanders.
Right. But others argue that it's ultimately up to governments to regulate the use of spyware, and that companies shouldn't be held responsible for how their products are used.
Sounds like there are no easy answers here.
Definitely not. It's a complex issue with a lot of gray areas.
It's like we're in the middle of a real-life spy thriller.
It kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, with governments and tech companies all playing this high-stakes game.
And we're all caught in the middle.
So what can we do?
Well, the first step is to educate ourselves. The more we understand about how spyware works and the risks it poses, the better equipped we'll be to protect ourselves.
And to push for change.
Exactly. We need to demand more transparency from governments and tech companies.
You need to hold them accountable for how this technology is being used.
It's not going to be easy, but it's a fight worth having.
Okay, I'm feeling a little more hopeful now. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by all this, but we can make a difference.
Absolutely. Every voice counts.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the world of Pegasus spyware. A little scary at times, but ultimately, I think, empowering.
I agree. Knowledge is power, And now we all know a lot more about this threat.
So, what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away from this conversation?
I think the most important thing is to be aware. Be aware of the risks. Be aware of the tools that are available to protect yourself. And most importantly, don't be afraid to speak out.
To demand change.
Exactly. We all have a role to play in protecting our privacy and our digital freedom.
Well said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And stay safe out there. It's kind of crazy to think that this level of surveillance is even possible, you know?
Yeah, it can be a bit unsettling. As technology gets more advanced, it seems like the tools for, surveillance are getting more powerful too and more accessible.
Right. And like we were talking about before, I mean, I get that governments need tools to fight crime and keep people safe, but where do we draw the line? It's a slippery slope, isn't it?
It really is. Finding that balance is tough.
Yeah.
And it's a debate that's happening, globally, all over the world. Some countries are taking a much stricter approach, like they're implementing, really strict regulations on how spyware can be used.
Oh, interesting.
And then you have others who are kind of taking a more hands-off approach. They're relying on existing laws and hoping for the best, which,
doesn't sound too reassuring.
yeah, not ideal.
So, are there any countries or organizations that are doing a good job of, tackling this issue? Like, are there any best practices out there that we can learn from?
Well, the European Union has been, I think, a leader in this area. They've been pushing for stronger privacy protections, including regulations specifically aimed at spyware.
So they're taking it seriously.
Yeah, they've recognized the potential for abuse, and they're trying to put safeguards in place. It's still an ongoing process, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Good to know. But what about the companies that are, developing and selling the spyware? Are they facing any consequences for their role in all of this?
Well, there has been growing pressure on those companies to be more transparent and accountable, for sure. The U.S. government, for example, has blacklisted NSO Group. That's the company that makes Pegasus.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which essentially limits their ability to do business with American companies. And there have also been a number of lawsuits filed against them alleging human rights abuses related to the use of their spyware.
So they're not getting away with it completely.
No, but the problem is that even if NSO Group gets shut down, there are other companies out there ready to, step in and fill that void.
That's like a hydra.
Exactly. Cut off one head and two more grow back.
Not encouraging. So it sounds like this isn't a problem that's going away anytime soon, right?
Unfortunately, that's probably true. The demand for this type of technology is high.
But what can we do, As individuals, how can we fight back against this surveillance threat? It can feel pretty overwhelming.
I know. It's easy to feel that way. But honestly, the most important thing is awareness. The more people understand about the risks of spyware, the more we can demand change.
Okay, but what about, concrete steps? Like, besides keeping our devices updated and being careful what we click on, what else can we do?
Well, using strong passwords, that's always important, and enabling two-factor authentication whenever possible.
Right, because that adds an extra layer of security.
Exactly.
Ah.
And you can also consider using a VPN.
A VPN? How would that help?
It encrypts your internet traffic, which makes it harder for, spyware to track your online activity.
Oh, so it's like putting a shield around your data.
Sort of. But it's important to remember that a VPN isn't a foolproof solution either. Remember those zero-click attacks we talked about?
Right, those are scary.
Yeah, Pegasus can infect your phone without even needing to, go through your internet connection.
So it's really about having multiple layers of protection.
Exactly. It's like, wearing a raincoat and carrying an umbrella. You're prepared for anything.
Good analogy. But even with all these precautions, it's still kind of unsettling.
I agree. But instead of feeling powerless, we can use that energy to make a difference. Support organizations that are fighting for digital privacy. Contact your elected officials and let them know you care about this issue. The more voices we have, the more likely we are to see change.
Yeah, you're right. It's easy to just, shrug and accept this as the new normal, but we have to push back.
We do. And together, we can make a difference.
Well, that's a great note to end on. This has been a fascinating and honestly kind of a terrifying deep dive into the world of Pegasus spyware. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, folks, knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay vigilant. Until next time.